Since it's the first lesson of this beginner's course, I thought I would take the opportunity to introduce myself and say bonjour. My name is Gail and I will be your teacher along this beginner's course that should comprise 10 lessons. Each time you can download the handouts on my website and I will leave the details in the description for this video. Without further ado, c'est parti, let's go. Understanding phonics or phonetics is going to be key to this course. I suggest you don't skip this part. It's going to be very important to help with your pronunciation. So how to explain phonics or phonetics? Now, it's a method that focuses on sound patterns to create words. Now, I'm not going to explain, I'm just going to show you an example in English first. The word apple can be broken down into different sounds put together. A, P, L. If I put these three sounds together, I end up with the word apple. Another example in French. The word chat can be written phonetically as follows. Sh, a, chat. You see that I put the sound sh and the sound a together to form chat. Just a little point. Note that phonetic transcriptions will always be written between those brackets, those square brackets. An important point as well. I'm not pretending to be an expert in phonetics, but I have used or created a simplified version of phonics so that you don't spend your time learning the phonetic symbols. You're not learning phonetics, you're learning French. So I focused on making it easy for you. The only thing we will have to do is to go through the symbols. Some will be specific to French. Most of them you'll find are going to be common to English. And we'll see this in a minute. So here we are. We've got sounds that are common in both languages, English and French. Now, note that the phonetic transcription is always going to be written between those brackets, those square brackets. Is to differentiate between the letter B, and the sound B. So what I've done is given you examples of words in English where you can find this sound. And what I'm going to do now is pronounce all these, the consonants and the vowel sounds, if you want, so that you have got an idea how to pronounce it. But you've got in red the equivalent sound in English, even though it's spelled sometimes a different way. Okay, so for example, this letter K is a sound, it's not the letter K. The sound K can be found in corn and in king, but the sound is the sound K. So here we go. B, D, F, G, K, J, L, M, N, P, S, Sh, T, V, Z, A, E, I, O, U. So these are the sounds, again, as I said, common to French and English. Now let's have a look at the specific sounds for French. These I reckon you will have to work on a bit more because they are specific to French. Here we go. The letter E. So this letter has no direct sound equivalent in English. Now to get to this sound, I'm going to give you a little help. So for the pronunciation of E, think of the word hey. It's made of three sounds. H, E, E, hey. So what you need to do is to break it down. The E sound is very much like the E in hey, okay, without the H or the Y. And to achieve this sound, your mouth will need to be in a sort of smiling position. So let's practice. Hey, E, E, E. Think of a smiling position. This is why I chose this little smiling face on the corner of the page to remind you that's what you need to do. E. Now, this sound will be represented in this course by the symbol, this symbol, okay, in brackets. You've got this smiley face that represents E. So when you see this sound written down, you think E, E. Now you might feel a bit strange to practice these sounds, but you'll get used to it. So to the next one. The sound U. Again, this letter has no direct sound equivalent in English, and it gets a bit trickier, okay? This might cause you a little bit of a problem at the beginning, but you'll get used to it, okay? So this sound, you will find it between the sound U and the sound E. So if imagine a scale between O and E, it's right in the middle. So I'll start. I'll go ooey, ooey. If I stop in the middle, you'll see I find the same U. Ooey, U, U, U. Now, there's another technique to get the real thing, or close to it. Think you want to give a kiss to somebody and you pout as if you were kissing somebody or blowing a kiss, okay? And then say E. So pout and try to say E. U, 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 U. So this sound will have the following symbol. Not very original. I was thinking of pouting and I thought a mouth would represent it better. So every time you see this symbol, it's going to be the sound U. Next, the R sound. Again, no real equivalent in English, but there is something that's close, and because it's a guttural sound, meaning coming from the throat, and it's similar to the h in Loch Ness. Okay, now to pronounce this, try to pronounce the letter K, as in kicking, K, that sound, K. Then try to let air out at the point where the sound inside your mouth is made. Okay, and when your throat vibrates, you should have the sound R. Okay, so K, K, R, R. Another technique is not very polite, I would say, not very elegant, but imagine you have something stuck in your throat at the back of your palate and try to clear it out. Not very elegant, but it works. What I also say is that the R sound is a bit like a roaring lion. Think of that. What I would say, do not over accentuate the sound R. Okay, if you don't get it straight away, simply pronounce an English R, R. In fact, the French find it rather sexy, so it's not a problem initially. You'll get used to it. Okay, again, that's something to practice. The sound will be represented by simply the letter R. Okay, it's a letter R, but in fact it's not a letter, it's a symbol. When you see that in brackets, it means r. Now, other typical French sound, and that's what sometimes appears as a cliche, are the nasal sound. Now, these sounds are speech sounds produced with air flowing through the nose, and it resonates in a nasal cavity, which gives you that nasal sound. So, first one, en. It sounds a bit like the en in angst, angst, en, en. You can see that if I say a, that's the a sound, a, and I say en, you can hear probably that the sound comes from the nose, en, en. And then we've got the sound sounds like the of song, 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 and then the sound un. It's not exactly the same as fang, but it's un. It's that un sound. Okay, sounds like the an in fang. Un. So I'm going to repeat these three. En, un. These will be represented as such in brackets. These are the symbols, and when you see them, this is what you've got to remember. Okay. Now, there's one or two things you need to know as well about letter combinations. Important when you read French, because that's one of the difficulties of French. You don't always pronounce it the way it's written. So an important one is the G and N put together. The pronunciation is a bit like the N in onion, and it sounds like this. N, n, n. And in this course, we will be represented by this symbol, which is the closest I could find to an onion. Sorry about that. The next one, very important. Now, as an English speaker, you'd be tempted to pronounce this oi, but in French, those two letters put together are always pronounced wa, wa. And finally, those two letters are not pronounced que wa, they're pronounced k. It's the sound k. The Q and the U always make one sound, and it's the sound k. Now, for what I like to call the cheeky silent letters. Now, French can be a bit tricky when you're reading it, because if you read it with just the actual transcript of French, you're tempted to pronounce a lot of the letters, and it doesn't always look like you read it. So it's important to know some of the rules. Not essential if you don't master it right now, but we'll talk about it, or I'll explain it to you so that it's out of the way, and then you're not surprised when you come across some of these. So let's go. First thing, final consonants are not pronounced. They are silent. What it means, if I look at these two examples, the word enfant, child, in the first bit of the example, you've got un enfant, one child, and you see that the T is silent, or you hear that the T is silent. I do not say un enfant, I say un enfant. So this is where French doesn't look or is not pronounced the way it's written. In the next example, deux enfants, two children. Again, we've got an S, a consonant, after the T, and we pronounce nothing. No T, no S. So in fact, the first word and the second word sound the same. Un enfant, deux enfants. Next, E. The letter E at the end of a word is silent, but the preceding consonant is pronounced. So what it means, again, in an example, you've got the word petit, which means small, and we've got it in two forms, the masculine and the feminine. Let's not worry about that right now, but you see you've got two words, regardless of what they mean. The first example, the first bit of the example, we've got the word petit with a silent T. And as we said earlier, we don't pronounce the T. So we end up with petit. In the feminine form, we end up with petite. We put an E to signify or to signal the feminine form, and that E somehow activates the last consonant, just to show that it is the feminine form. So we go from petit into petite with the T pronounced. Finally, H in French is never pronounced. I sometimes wonder why we actually write it down, because we don't say it. So if I take these two examples, l'hôpital, l'histoire, we don't pronounce the H. Now, English people tend to pronounce the H's quite clearly, and it's sometimes difficult for them to omit it. But if you try to say both, you try to say in French le hôpital, it's a lot more difficult to say than l'hôpital, the same as l'histoire, and you will far more difficult to practice than l'histoire. But the H is there, but we don't say it. Right here, I've given you a summary of today's lesson. I will make this available on my website, and I will leave the details on the description for this video. Please download it, print it off, because you will need it for the next lessons, and you will also need it to practice and revise. Now a little bit of practice for you. We've got these typically French sounds. You will read them with in French, and next to it you'll have the phonetic transcription, and all you have to do is say them out loud. What I'll do 3 seconds after is give you the correct pronunciation. So let's start with the first sound, which is the sound with a smiley face, and the sound E. Let's go. Bébé. Casse-pied. Préféré. Okay, so that's it for the first sound. The next sound, which is the mouth sort of symbol, and it's the sound U. Let's go. Voiture. Super. Flûte. Okay, that's it for this sound. Now let's move to the R sound. Ready? Let's go. Risque. Raisin. Retour. Next one. Campagne. Signe. Gagner. Next one. Sound en. Lent. Méchant. Grand. Next sound. Oncle. Bonbon. Bien. Demain. Fin. And the last one. Wa. Poisson. Boire. Au revoir. So here we go. Now, second practice. Now, for this second practice exercise, you will look at some French words found in English language. And I will show you the phonetic transcription, give you 3 seconds to pronounce the word correctly. Then I'll show you the French transcription and I will give you the pronunciation. Ready? Let's go. Bouquet. Chauffeur. Cliché. Clique. Entrepreneur. Exposé. Femme fatale. Fiancé. Genre. Protégé. Rendez-vous. Souvenir. Félicitations. Congratulations. You have completed lesson 1, which I think is the most important lesson because it's going to be the basis for pronunciation, the basis of all the other lessons. So as follow-up activities, I suggest that you practice the pronunciation of typical French sounds and that you get familiar with the phonetic symbols. You'll find those in the summary sheet, and all is left for me to do now is to say au revoir et à bientôt for the next lesson.